Hey, it's A Humble Collector here, and today's video we're going to take a look at the 4-panel death card for a set of brother-in-laws, Walter Kuchler and Karl Forschl. And when I first unboxed this card a couple years ago now, I can't remember which video specifically, I believe I referred to this card as stunning, and you'll see why in a minute. This is really a fascinating and unique card. So going from the first panel here, we have greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for your loved ones. That's John 15:13. Then moving to the interior, we can see that Walter and Karl here are both officers and also both highly decorated, but we'll get into that in a minute. So starting with Walter over here, think with Christian love on our only son, Walter Kuchler, Hauptmann, which is a captain and leader of a Gebirgs-Panzer-Jager-Abteilung, which is an anti-tank detachment. Bearer of the Iron Cross, first, second class, and the Close Combat Clasp in silver, and various other awards. Born June 27th, 1920, in Geiselhoring. Killed on March 27, 1945, on the German-Hungarian border. His final resting place is the church in Horvat Nadalja by Zombathli. And unfortunately, there's no casualty record for Walter. However, Volks notes he was killed 12 to 15 kilometers west of Yanaskaza, which puts us right at Zombathli, so that lines up with the card here. And based off the location of his death, I believe he's part of the 1st Volks Gebirgs Division, which is the reorganization of the 1st Gebirgs Division at the end of the war. I based that off the fact that they were in Western Hungary at the time. And as some of you who've watched the channel for a while know, I do actually have the unit history for the 1st Gebirgs Division. Die Stammdivision der Deutschen Gebirgstruppe, or the Wegunkampf der 1st Gebirgs Division, 1935-1945. But in here, at the end of the war, we do actually have a brief kind of write-up of what was going on at the time, so I'll go ahead and translate that now. On March 26, 1945, the enemy once again succeeded in advancing further southwest of Lake Balaton. Under March 27, 1945, we find the following entry in the KTB of the OKW. Army Group South. Enemy advanced to the west north of Lake Balaton and expansion of the penetration area near Leva. In detail, north of Lake Balaton, our own forces have fallen back to half of the lake. Parts of the 1st Volks Gebirgs Division have already entered the fight. The enemy has reached the Rob sector in the outskirts of the city. The bridgehead of the 3rd Hungarian Army near Gran has now been evacuated. The enemy has formed further bridgeheads across the lower Gran. Near Leva, they advanced further to the west. West of Altsol, they achieved local successes. North of Nusol, the situation has deteriorated further, as stationary Hungarian forces retreated and bands entered the fight. From then on, events unfolded rapidly. Instructions were sent to Army Group South, but due to the dramatically escalating situation amongst the German units, these were already outdated before they were passed on by the Army Group to the divisions. The final battles of the 1st Volks Gebirgs Division for the homeland lasted from March 23rd to May 9th, 1945, the day of bitter, unconditional surrender of the German Wehrmacht. To secure the Rob crossing near Kalm, the division moved back to the also Hegi-Bikes-Gertianos line. The withdrawal to the so-called Reich protection position turned into a race with the enemy, which the division was able to win for the time being. The relatively well-developed position between Rob and Eisenberg gave the Gebirgsjägers some confidence and support again. It was truly incredible what the Gebirgsjägers still achieved after 67 months of war. For example, there was the dominating height of Neudeberg, which offers a view of Stegersbach and Burgau with its wide valley. This height was fought over particularly hard. The Russians were determined to take possession of it in order to control the German troops retreating through the Lofnitz Valley. Despite the end of the war already being expected, the troops defended this height with enormous commitment to enable their comrades to return home. And the division's marching achievements from its deployment in the Balkans to the bitter end were also enormous. 5,745 kilometers were covered on foot, 890 kilometers by motor, and 6,980 kilometers by rail. So as we can see, bitter fighting there on the German-Hungarian border, and Walter is actually buried in the Budaurs Military Cemetery in Hungary, Block 11, Row 4, Grave 189. And kind of unusual for a Hauptmann to have the Close Combat Clasp, by the way, because that implies that he was involved in very close combat with enemy soldiers, especially in silver. I believe the silver is like 15 days of close combat with the enemy. So Walter here is very clearly leading from the front, and it's a bit odd that he wasn't mentioned actually in the book, but I'm going to come to that a little bit later when we talk about Karl. So moving on to panel 3 here with Karl. So right off the bat, we can see he actually has been awarded the German Cross in Gold, which is one of the highest awards in the German military, and it's right below the Knight's Cross, the Iron Cross. And he also has the infantry assault badge, the Iron Cross First Class, the wound badge. But moving to the text here, think in Christian love of our son-in-law Karl Forschl, major and regimental commander in a Gebirgsjager regiment, from Hong in Oberbayern, bearer of the German Cross and Gold and various other awards, fell on April 2nd, 1945, on German homeland soil as one of the last war victims. And I'd like to point out, because this will be relevant later, April 2nd is the day after Easter. But yeah, this is the first card that I can remember having or seeing for a regimental commander. So Karl here is pretty high ranking in his unit. Now, unfortunately, I could not find a record for him on Ancestry or Volksbund. But given he's a German Cross and Gold winner, and those tend to be pretty well documented, I did find some info on him. He was apparently awarded the German Cross and Gold on December 15th, 1944, while serving as commander of the 3rd Battalion of Gebirgsjager Regiment 136, which was part of the 2nd Gebirgs Division. He would be killed while commanding the 137th Gebirgsjager Regiment, which was in the same division. And at the time of his death, the division was in the Hunsrück Mountains in Germany. And once again, I am fortunate enough, I do actually have the unit history for the 2nd Gebirgs Division, which is the Es Vor an Edelweiss by Leopold Stocker-Verlog. You can actually see there's a handy map here showing where they were at the time. So he was killed April 2nd. And as we can see here, that puts him right in this area near Heilbronn. But I'll go ahead and translate a section of this here for you guys. From March 25th to 30th, 1945, the 2nd Gebirgs Division defended the Rhine position near Gemmersheim and repelled several American attempts to cross the river. Then an alarming message arrived. An American army had taken Mannheim, north of our defensive position, crossed the Rhine, and advanced to Heidelberg. Sherman tanks were already advancing south on the Autobahn, as if it had been created for them, and threatening the right flank of our position in the Rhine Valley. In a hurry, General Utz withdrew the division to the wooded heights above the Rhine Valley, which form the northern foothills of the Black Forest. Meanwhile, parts of the division took up a new defensive position in Kraichgau. Then the order came to prepare everything for the defense of Heilbronn in order to intercept an American advance from Heidelberg into the Neckar Valley. In forced marches, all available troops were assembled in the Heilbronn area. The city had already suffered heavily from air raids. The artillery took up positions on the surrounding heights. The Wartburg observation tower provided excellent observation of enemy movements, but ammunition was scarce. Only tanks attempting to advance across the Neckar River were permitted to be fired upon. The 8-day battle began on Easter Sunday. So Karl being killed the day after Easter Sunday here, he was killed right at the beginning of that fight. And once again, it's odd, because there's a bit more that goes on in the next couple paragraphs, but nothing that ties directly to Karl. It's quite strange that a regimental commander being killed isn't mentioned in the unit history, because as we've seen from several other unit histories we've looked at, officers like lieutenants, captains, majors, obviously, would be mentioned quite regularly. Usually the unit they were in command of was referred to as like so-and-so's battalion, so-and-so's regiment. So it's strange that here where both these men were killed, they aren't mentioned at all. And the only thing that I can really think of is just because of how desperate and confused the last few months of the war were for the Germans, and the fact that people were deserting and being killed left and right as the defensive lines were collapsing, is the death of a Hauptmann and a major just didn't really register on top of everything else that was going on. So many officers were being killed or, disappearing that their loss just wasn't noticed enough to be recalled when the time came to write these unit histories, which is, quite surprising, actually, especially for a German Cross and Gold winner like Karl. But moving to the fourth panel here, which also worth noting, the Iron Cross stamp here has been denazified prior to printing. So that implies this is probably a late 45, maybe early 46 printing or sometime thereabouts, because by that point I think the denazification laws would have been in effect, so they would have had to remove that. In fact, the inclusion of an Iron Cross at all is quite strange given the period. But moving to this fourth panel. This was the most painful thing about your fate. You were still at the dawn of your time. You seemed ready to build your work. All your dreams were great. You were called to sacrifice. You accepted this fate too, giving the seeds of the future to a later generation, while your feet entered the realm of the dead. You were silent, and your lips are pressed against a face that is still gray from last night's battle. Now rest, you mute ones, those who let death happen. So you fall in the fiery battle, fulfilling your mission through action. You rest in us, perfect and just. R.I.P. Merciful Jesus, grant the dead heroes eternal rest. So yeah, overall, really interesting card, very unusual. If I remember correctly, I think I paid a bit of a premium for this one, but as you can see, I think it was worth it. And even though I couldn't find casualty records for either of them, being as familiar with the Gebirgs divisions as I am now, I was able to kind of pinpoint who they were with. And with Karl, I found records outside of the casualty system referring to him and what unit he was with, so that also helped. But yeah, overall, I hope you guys all enjoyed the video. Please leave a comment down below. Love hearing from you. Thank you all for watching. Happy collecting, and I'll see you all again very soon.